All right, we're still missing two select board members, but one's in the car and will hopefully dial in, and I haven't heard from the other one. Hopefully be joining us soon, but we're a little bit past our start time, so I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting the order with the quorum that we do have. So when I call your name, just say that you're present so we know that you're here from the board. Tom Myers.
Present.
Bill Wilson.
Present.
And myself, Sean Farrell, is present. And I'll call this meeting for October 30th to order. Tonight we have kind of a one-item agenda. We have space for public comment at the beginning of all of our public meetings. And this is for 3 minutes for members of the public to comment on any issue that is not listed on our agenda tonight. So if anybody here tonight wishes to speak to an item not on the agenda at the moment, please raise your hand and we'll address you and you can speak. All right, seeing no hands up, we'll move on. And so tonight, we're going to discuss with town council. And Amy, can you pronounce your last name for me so I don't butcher it? Is it?
It's Amy Quissel.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Amy.
Yep.
So we have Amy with us tonight, and this is in regards to the recent filing of a Chapter 40B project eligibility application for the property at 133 Essex Street and the disclosure of the town's options and next steps. Mainly this meeting is just it's for the public, but it's also mainly for the select board to kind of get up to speed on everything 40B that we can discuss tonight and steps of the project and the process. It's not really much of a discussion. This is just talking about next steps. If you do have any comments, do raise your hand though, but we want to keep it within the four corners of the discussion. So please keep that in mind if you do want to add to the conversation. So Joe, do you want to tee off this, or Amy, do you want to go and just kind of tee up what we're talking about tonight?
I just say that the town received a notification from the state that a 40B project was proposed for the site at 133 Essex Avenue. We have a comment period that's opening. We've asked Amy Quissel from our town council, KP Law, to be here with us. Amy will be retained in this endeavor and our efforts to work with this 40B proposal that's in front of us. She's very well versed in this area of law, and I thought it would be good for the select board to get a good understanding of what the process is and what the next steps are. And I'm going to let the experts talk about it now.
Right, and just if I can butt in for a second before Amy speaks, that really we've just received the notification. Now we're into a comment period, I think until November 20th. And you correct me if I'm wrong, Amy, that we have to submit comments from different town committees and boards based on the application.
That is correct. So what happened to trigger that comment period is that the applicant has filed an application for a project eligibility letter, which is sometimes referred to as a PEL, a PEL. And they file an application with Mass Housing to get a project eligibility letter. The project eligibility letter does a couple things. It confirms the 3 prongs needed to be able to file an application with the ZBA, and that is that that there is a limited dividend organization and that they have site control and that they have evidence of funding. But Mass Housing also takes a look at the entire project as a whole, and they obviously solicit comments from the local municipality to find out, what some of the concerns are of the town. They also hold a site visit at the property where the town can point out, certain issues or non-issues. And that all occurs usually within 30 days. And so you are correct, your comment period ends on November 20th. So what I have advised is that the application for the PEL be sent to town departments, town boards, and then those boards can then compile comments on the project, and then those comments will be taken into consideration by the select board, and the select board will be sending a comment letter to Mass Housing. The select board has some options. They can they can take in all the comments and create a letter outlining, you know, the important points, et cetera, or they could simply do like an outline or a bullet form, and then they can attach all of the comments from town staff and town boards. That is the usual way that comments are submitted to Mass Housing. Once Mass Housing issues their PEL to the applicant, that then allows the applicant to file an application with the Zoning Board of Appeals under the Comprehensive Permit Statute. The Comprehensive Permit Statute, it's Chapter 40B, Sections 19 through 23. It essentially allows the Zoning Board of Appeals to step into the shoes of every other local board in town and enact local bylaws and regulations, rules, policies, et cetera. So any local bylaw, regulation, policy, or rule will be enacted by the Zoning Board of Appeals. The Zoning Board of Appeals also, under the statute, has the ability to waive any local bylaw, regulation, policy, or rule. Now, that being said, the Zoning Board of Appeals does not have the ability to waive any state regulation. And so therefore, two prevalent state regulations are the regulations under the Wetland Protection Act. Those can be found at 310 CMR 10, and Title V, which can be found at 310 CMR 15. Those will be regulated by the Conservation Commission for the Wetland Protection Act and by the Board of Health for the Title V. And so while the applicant will be applying to the Zoning Board of Appeals, if there are wetland implications or Title V implications, they'll also need to get approvals from those other boards under the state act only. For example, any local Board of Health regulations will be, those will be determined by the Zoning Board of Appeals because they are a local board. This project, as I'm sure you're familiar with it, you know, in any event, at the property, at least 133 Essex, is the subject of a denial of a special permit and stormwater permit by the planning board. And that proposal was for 50 units. This proposal is for 59 condominiums in, off the top of my head, I want to say 32 buildings. There are 44 units, which will be market rate units, and those will be over 55. Those will be 55 and older, where one of the residents has to be 55 and older, and no resident can be under 18. And then there will be, I think it's 15 affordable units. The affordable units cannot have the age restriction attached to them. But those 15 units will be, those will be put on the subsidized housing inventory, which is also called the SHI. The SHI is compiled and it's kept by the state by, it was formerly DHCD, it's now EOHLC. That's the new acronym, and they keep the SHI, and the purpose of the SHI is to determine when a town reaches 10%, when they have 10% affordable housing. It also helps when a town has a housing production plan. It can keep track of how many units are put on in a year, or so the SHI is very important, and this will add some units to the SHI. Because this is under Chapter 40B, units will be added to the SHI pretty much in the normal course. It's a little bit different than when the town, when there's LAUs, which are local action units. Those are a little bit more involved to get on the SHI, but here, because it's under 40B, these units will be automatically placed on the SHI for the first year at least, and then it depends on when permits are pulled, et cetera. So that's really where we're at right now. As an overview, going back to the comments and the comment period, the comments that, you know, the comments that I see quite a bit are comments related to the buildability of the property, with regard to wetlands, with regard to, slopes. We also usually receive significant comments from, the Board of Health with regard to, wastewater treatment. Here, they do have an approved Title V system for the 50 units. So they obviously will have to have that modified for the increase in the number of units, which obviously will increase the number of bedrooms. And then the other factor that usually plays pretty significantly into 40B developments is traffic. So again, the planning board did look at traffic with their special permit. So, I'm assuming that the applicant will upgrade, simply update their traffic study, for this new proposal. But those are usually the comments that we're looking for. Under 40B, this won't necessarily, I don't think, be too much of an issue because it is an age restricted. It's proposed to be age restricted, but the regulations under 40B specifically state that a town is not allowed to consider school enrollment. And the other thing is that conditions that relate to the improvement of infrastructure off-site, off of the project site, are generally not upheld. So those are usually overturned by the Housing Appeals Committee, which is part of EOHLC, but it is the adjudicatory arm of EOHLC, and the Housing Appeals Committee, or the HAC, that is where the developer goes to appeal their permit or conditions. So even if they if they are denied, they go to HAC, but even if they are approved with conditions, they are able to appeal certain conditions to the HAC. To be frank, the HAC generally does not rule in favor of municipalities, and they take into consideration the need for affordable housing. There is a presumption that the need for affordable housing overrides everything else, and we are tasked with overcoming that presumption, which is a very hard presumption to overcome.
Thank you, Amy.
You're
I
welcome.
see we have one hand up, but Rudy, we'll get to you in a second. Just be patient. I just want to also add that one of our other select board members, Caroline Beaulieu, joined us about 10 minutes ago, probably now. And then we'll open it up to the select board. If anybody has any questions or comments right off the bat about the process or anything with 40B, feel free to ask.
Yeah, one question for me, Sean, thanks. And Amy, thanks for that summary. That was really helpful. Obviously, there's pending litigation on the other matter that was denied before the planning board. So how does that, I guess, play into this overall picture?
So right now, the pending litigation doesn't necessarily play in, because right now all they're doing is applying for a project eligibility letter with Mass Housing. Once Mass Housing issues that letter, the letter is good for 2 years and can also be extended by Mass Housing. It's when they actually go to apply to the Zoning Board of Appeals is when we need to know exactly what's going on with that related litigation, because it is the same property. So there is a prohibition against them filing with the Zoning Board of Appeals for 12 months. And so we have to find out where they would be at with that litigation and how and the significant differences in the project. I don't necessarily see a lot of differences in the project except for the 9 extra units. In fact, in their application to Mass Housing, they are noting that they already have an approval for their septic, and they will simply just be doing a minor modification to that, which makes it seem like it is a related application. So we have reached out to their counsel the litigation, for the planning board litigation, to find out what is going on. We haven't heard back from him yet. They do have different counsel that's going to be representing them at the zoning board of appeals. So it's a little bit, we're not really sure. So I guess the short answer to your question, which is a really good question, is that we don't know yet because they haven't applied to the zoning board of appeals yet.
Thank you. That's helpful. So one other question as well. Obviously, there's a lot of folks here on the call tonight, so it's generating some interest. And I know we have comments that'll be provided by the select board and other boards within the town. Does that incorporate public comment in there, or is that just from the select board and from town officials, or how does public comment get weighed into that process?
The comment letter that you would be sending would be from the town. That would be the town's comment letter. But I don't see any reason why individuals cannot comment on the project eligibility letter. And in fact, I have seen the public comment on project eligibility letters.
Thanks.
And the obviously, once the application is filed with the zoning board of appeals, there are timelines that are individual to just a comprehensive permit. For example, once a application is filed with the zoning board of appeals, the zoning board of appeals sends the application to all local boards within 7 days. They then have to open the hearing within 30 days. Once the hearing is open, they have 180 days to close it. They then have 40 days to issue a decision. The 30 days, the 180 days, and the 40 days, if any of those deadlines are missed, the town is subject to constructive approval. Any of those deadlines obviously can be extended by agreement of the parties. But once that hearing opens, it opens as a public hearing, as any other zoning board hearing would open. So there is notice to the abutters within abutters within 300 feet. There is newspaper, so there's publication notice twice in a newspaper 14 days ahead of time, and then there's also posting at town hall. So once the ZBA opens the hearing, it is a public hearing, and therefore the public is able to weigh in.
Bill Wilson, any questions or comments from you?
Sorry, I was on mute. No, I understand the process pretty well. I think what's different here is there was just an application, there's the pending litigation that Tom mentioned. I guess maybe not for tonight, but I would want to understand, the components of the denial on that and what might overlap into comments into this application for the PEL. I know, Amy, you mentioned wetland protection, Title V are some of the bigger things that get looked at. I don't know if those were applicable to that. But I think, some of our diligence really needs to be around, doing a side-by-side on, what happened, a year and a half ago or 2 years ago compared to this filing. I don't know. Again, I wasn't involved back then, so I got to get up to speed on that. I know this is 50 units. I don't know if that's different than 59. Was it separate houses or were they units? How many buildings, impact to septic, et cetera. Sounds like, Amy, you were saying the only real difference is the septic. Relative to needing more septic capacity. Is that correct?
Yeah, it seems that the project, the disturbance of the site is relatively comparable. The planning board also considered a stormwater permit, and so obviously, and I was personally not involved in the planning board process either, but there was a denial of the stormwater permit. So stormwater is a concern. One of the things that when it gets to the zoning board of appeals, one of the things that I always recommend to all of the ZBAs is that at the very first hearing, at the opening hearing, the board vote to go to peer review. And with regard to peer review, I always suggest that the peer reviewer look at civil engineering, which is the interior, for example, how a fire truck can get around the parking areas, et cetera, snow storage. They look at stormwater, they look at wetlands, they look at traffic, and part of the civil engineering is also slopes and things like that. So the ZBA would not be doing this on their own. They would have help with peer reviewer, and the peer review would be paid for under the under Chapter 43, Section 53G, which is the peer review account where the ZBA gets a proposal. That money is placed into a separate account from the applicant. The applicant submits the money. It goes into a separate account with the treasurer, and that money is drawn down on and can be replenished if necessary. But I would think that they would be looking at, one of the things that would be important is the stormwater also on this case.
So when do you think that first hearing, based on this being the start of comment, I think you said 11/20, that ends, is that something the housing authority would, give approval for them to go right to the zoning board right away? Is it 30 days if there's a?
It's about 30 days. It's relatively quick. Yes. So I would anticipate, unless there's a problem with their application, which I reviewed their entire application. They did submit it to the town, and it's pretty thorough. I didn't notice anything glaringly missing or wrong. So I would assume that they would get their PEL before the end of this year.
Okay, that's all I got, Sean. Thanks.
All right, and Joe and or Patrick, would you mind sending Bill Wilson the planning board's denial and all the information with that so we can get up to speed?
Yeah,
I think
Patrick,
it's
sorry,
It
Sean.
was already done. It was done this morning.
Oh,
Patrick
perfect.
got it to me today. I just got to go through it. Looks pretty
Awesome.
detailed.
Job well done then, gentlemen. And I think that's relevant. Bill's comment about looking at the planning board's decision and weighing that into the comments that we give to for the application. Caroline, if you can hear me, do you have any comments or questions?
Yeah, I did have and I apologize, I'm driving. I did have a clarifying question about that. So some of I think the key part of the planning board's denial of the permit was about maximum build space and maxing all of the, every single bit of land and all of that. Would just tacking on 40B allow them to bypass those limits? I'm a little confused on how basically increasing the build changes this process. And I'm sorry if that's naive. I don't understand this quite yet.
So pursuant to 40B, the developers do have a bit more leeway with regard to their certain development, because unlike a 40A, a standard project, they are able to ask for waivers, and they're able to ask for waivers from the zoning bylaw, from the lot coverage, from density requirements. They're also able to ask for waivers from planning board rules and regulations. And so
and that's for the entire, it doesn't just cover the parts of the project that are 40B, it's for the entirety of the project.
Correct.
Okay.
So, to be frank, they increase the units because they have to supply a certain number of affordable units.
Yep.
That's my assumption.
So, I mean, I know that some of the denial was based on an interpretation of what it might mean to maximize build. And so I'm just wondering, it was in some ways subjectively interpreting what might be objective bylaws and regulations. And so does this completely bypass the planning board at this point and just goes to the ZBA?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you for clarifying that for me.
Yep. No problem.
That's it for me, Sean.
Thanks, Caroline. And then we have our planning inspections director on the call as well. Patrick, do you have anything to add?
The project as proposed has a lot of similarities to the earlier project, as was noted by Amy and some others. There's 9 units that are being added. This site has quite a few wetlands issues related with it, which largely focuses the development on the interior. I think it is important to utilize the benefit in the thinking of the planning board decision. I'm sure that the zoning board of appeals will likely look at that set of comments. And I will certainly work with them through the process.
Perfect. Thank you, Patrick. And then we also have the planning board chair on tonight. Marnie, do you have any comments or questions for Amy?
Well, I have reviewed the Pell. I have not studied how the differences in the number of units affects the decision of the planning board. I suspect that it's substantially the same project. I have questions as to whether the order of conditions, which was for a 50 unit, 55 plus senior housing development, would apply to a completely different project that's not under one of our zoning bylaws that has children living there. I do know two things that are potential issues, and I'm going to reserve all the more technical aspects of this to full consultation with the planning board. With respect to the income restricted units, the application provides the income restricted units will allow householders of any age as long as one household member is age 55 or older. And I think that's a bit of a sleight of hand to actually make that project such that it would be unlikely that there would be small children or toddlers there, just because of the simple math of when you can have children. And the other thing about the SHI is I didn't notice anything in this Pell with respect to the affordability restrictions being in perpetuity. So these units could not be on the SHI unless they had deed restrictions. I think that in Hamilton, we like to see that those restrictions last in perpetuity. I know in Ricker Circle, some of the units had, I believe, 20 year restrictions. And then of course the owners sold them for considerable profit. And that's really not the purpose of affordable housing. So I didn't see any reference to those deeds being restricted in perpetuity. And that's something that I would want to see. But in terms of how this project compares to the other one, it looks to me like they're substantially similar. It looks like the stormwater system are in the same places. And of course, there's nothing in the Pell that would address any of the detailed findings that the planning board made with respect to the duration of the project and the construction traffic. And one of the huge concerns of all the abutters was the blasting and the Bentley Warren 18-wheelers going through the town, et cetera, et cetera. There were a myriad of issues, and all of them have to be studied again in relation to this project. But I'll stop there. But I think that the planning board will review this and comment.
Thank you, Marnie. I appreciate it. And Rudy, you've been patient. You've got your hand up. Feel free to ask your question or give your comment.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I just had a question for Amy. You had mentioned
Rudy, I hate to interject and cut you off, but if you could just for the minutes just say first, last name and address, that'd be great.
Oh, Rudolph Pisano, Essex Street, South Hamilton.
Thanks, Rudy.
Yeah, Amy, you had mentioned that the state regulations would apply, but the local wouldn't.
No, just to be clear, the zoning board steps into the shoes of every other local board for any local bylaw regulation. They do not step into the shoes of the Conservation Commission with regard to the Wetland Protection Act or the Board of Health with regard to Title V.
Sure.
So the regulations will still be considered just by the
Right.
zoning.
There's in 310 Mass Regulation 7.10 is all about noise pollution. And given the incredible amount of excavation, blasting, and everything else that's gone on with this project, I really think that this is something that, from what I understand, can't be waived and should definitely be considered along with stormwater and along with conservation. So if you could look at that and see what the applicability is, I think it would add another layer of protection to the citizens of Hamilton. Thank you.
So that would be under Mass DEP 310 CMR 7.10. The noise regulations are under control of Mass DEP unless the town has a local noise ordinance. And in that case, the noise ordinance will be considered by ZBA.
Right. And again, this is something that has been brought to the attention of everyone. And I think it would behoove the selectmen, as I have mentioned it several times before, to get going on it, because this is going to be an extremely loud project and it's going to generate harmful levels of noise if it's approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Rudy. Rosie, you had your hand up?
So, hi, good evening. Thank you for noticing me, Sean. I just have a question about stormwater management, and I'm
Rosie,
not.
just state your last name for the record. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, Rosie Kennedy, Rust Street in Hamilton. My question is about stormwater management. I know that there's a pending amendment to our stormwater management. I don't know if and how much it may affect this new project, but my question is specifically, when does the stormwater management bylaw kick in? I'm asking which bylaw we would use. Does the stormwater management kick in at the time of the PEL application or the actual application for the project to the ZBA?
At the actual application to the ZBA, the day that it's filed with the town clerk.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other general 40B questions for Amy or comments?
I can, excuse me, I can answer Rosie's question maybe
Yeah,
a
go ahead,
little
Marnie.
bit. So if we assume that the general bylaw for stormwater management is approved at town meeting on November 6th, then that new bylaw would go to the AG, and if the AG signs off on it, then it becomes law. So the exact date when the new general bylaw, assuming it is adopted at town meeting, becomes effective is when the AG approves it, but that is not a clear date. So whether that new stormwater management would apply to the application before the ZBA is an open question.
Right. In my kind of
I-
historical knowledge, if I can just say, is it Rick? I don't mean to interrupt you if it was Rick talking. That AG's approval of our bylaw typically is about 3 or 4 months. It seems in the past we've had something come up like this, so it's
They have
it's
up to-
a
they have
long
up to
run,
90
a short
They have
one,
up to
right?
90 days to do it, but
Yeah.
I don't know what traditionally they do. They have 90 days.
So the answer to that is it won't apply because once you've made an application, it only applies to existing bylaws. You can't go back and regulate with a pencil and eraser. So, and I was late to getting entered into the meeting, so I didn't quite get the answer. I was told by the former conservation agent that our local conservation wetland bylaws will not apply, that 40B overrides those, and the only ones that will apply are those state mandated. Is
Correct.
that- Okay, good. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments or questions? We're very early in the process here, but I want to thank everybody for showing up tonight and being involved, and obviously stay tuned as the process evolves. And we're going to start collecting all those comments from our committees and boards before that November 20th date. In the select board, we'll compile them all and send them off to the state. And I'm going to forget the moniker now, but EOHLC, is that it, Amy?
Yes,
Saying
it's
DHCD.
difficult.
Yeah.
Executive Office of Housing and Livable
And livable
Communities. Yeah, I
Right.
think. It'll take us all 10 years to remember that, and then they'll change
Probably
it.
just by the time I get used to it. Yeah. Anything else, Joe, you think you want to add, or Patrick, before we?
I just to let people know, the site visit is this week. We'll be taking some members of staff, myself, Patrick. Sean, did you want to see if any members of the select board wanted to attend that?
Yeah, if
Um,
anybody wants to attend that, I'm gonna try to make it. I'm pretty sure I can, but it would be great if somebody else was there too, if I didn't make it. But it's at 10:30 on Wednesday.
We just don't want more than 2 committee members.
Right. Yeah, so let me know if you can make it, or Joe, and then we'll figure it out. If there's 3 of us, only 2 will go.
And Amy did mention in an earlier discussion that we had, Sean, that if we need to, we can always ask the state for a little bit more time in the comment period. We can ask for to extend the comment period, but we'll get out there this week and assess the situation. And we've already sent it to all department heads and the major boards and committees and asked them to start preparing their comments. So Planning Board, Board of Health, Conservation Commission will all, I'm sure, weigh in, hopefully in due course, to be able to get us to that deadline.
Right, and I see one hand up from Virginia. Virginia, just state your name and address and ask your question, then we'll close the meeting.
Name is Virginia Cookson, address is 318 Forest Street. And I was just going to ask if we could, you might cordially invite our new coordinator to go on the site, since she's brand new and no idea of, having never been on the site. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Patrick's already told her about it. Patrick, is that right? You tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty
She
sure that
has
we've
been
already discussed
invited. Definitely.
Thank you.
Virginia, appreciate it. All right, so stay tuned, folks. Lots in the works here. So I will take a motion from one of my board members to adjourn for the night.
So moved.
All right, and we'll do a roll call. We'll start with you, Caroline.
You need a second for that motion.
Oh,
Yeah.
we need a second.
From our-
Second by, was that Bill or Tom?
Tom.
Thank you, Tom. All right, Caroline, go ahead.
Caroline Beaulieu, aye.
Tom,
Tom Myers, aye.
Bill Wilson,
Bill Wilson, aye.
and myself, Sean Farrell. I thank you, everyone, for joining us, and please stay involved.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you, Amy.